Hi, this is Brandon Yeltz from the implementation team. Today we're going to be discussing user-defined fields. What a user-defined field is, it allows a customer really to create a specific field for their business needs. So something that's not an existing field within GP or SalesPad, some customers will want to create their own specific field for their business. So that's what SalesPad allows, is for users or our customers to be able to add specific fields based on their business to our software. SalesPad does pride itself on having an unlimited amount of user-defined fields, so you can create as many user-defined fields as you want. We do have a limit of having up to 200 user-defined fields per screen or per window. However, you can still, if it's part of, like, for example, the sales document business object, you can still have as many user fields on that business object as you'd like. So our user-defined fields, not a ton of security around this. If I go to my admin menu here and go to security editor, and then if I filter just in here for user-defined field or user field editor, there's just one checkbox around it. And so really this is going to be around giving specific users access to the user field editor. Typically we'll only have admins have access to the user field editor, mainly because you don't want your everyday user adding or removing, modifying existing user-defined fields within the system. In order to access the user-defined field editor, I'm going to go to my admin menu here in the upper left corner. And I'm just going to click on the user field editor. And so once I click on that, that's going to pull up this user field editor screen. So there are a few different sections from this screen. The left side, we have our business objects. And so these are all of the different business objects that you have the ability to create user-defined fields against. So you'll notice in my test system, if I click on, for example, item master, I already have quite a few different user-defined fields in my system. But you'll see once I click on the sales line item business object or any of these other ones, it categorizes which business object you have your user-defined field on. So like I said, the left side is the business objects. In the middle is the actual user field section. So this is where you're actually creating the user-defined field for that business object. And then to the right of that, you have your field properties. So once you create a user-defined field for that business object, or if you're modifying an existing user-defined field, that's where you would make the adjustments to in this field properties section. So in our specific example, I'm going to create a customer user-defined field. So what I can do is click the customer section right here. And if I want to create a brand new user-defined field, I can just hit the new button here. And when I click the new button, that's going to pull up the new user field window. What the field name is used for is the physical name of that actual user-defined field. So if you want to do a SQL query on this field later, or if you need to create a report or pull this onto a form, the field name is what is going to be the actual physical name of that user-defined field. You'll notice in all of my user-defined fields, I put an X in front of it. You can really use any sort of character to start off your user-defined field, or you don't have to put any. I like to put an X in front of my user-defined field just for my knowledge, for me to know if I'm doing a SQL query later that field that I'm doing it on is a user-defined field. So if I want to create this new user-defined field on my customer business object, I'm going to type in an X like I normally do. And I'm going to call this one customer type. And I hit OK, or I can hit enter. Once I do that, you'll notice it creates my new user-defined field right here. And now we're ready to modify this user-defined field in the actual field properties section. So I'm going to go over some of the main field properties we see. I'm not going to cover all of them, but if you do have any questions, be sure to check out our documentation on user-defined fields on our website. The map to, so what this allows us to do is actually map this user-defined field to a pre-existing GP user-defined field. So if that user field is not currently being used in GP, or if you don't have it linked to a user-defined field in SalesPad, you do have the option to choose one of these user-defined fields. Now, once you do click on one of the user-defined fields and tab off, it'll actually automatically set the field type and length. Because this field type and this length of this user-defined field 1 in GP is already set, and so we need to respect GP settings along with this user-defined field. So I'm not going to actually link this user-defined field to a GP one. Screen label is what I want my users to see. So this is the field name or the physical name of that actual user-defined field. The screen label itself is what your actual users are going to see on the screen. The field name might be customer type, but I want to have it say type of customer. What field type is used for is you can actually modify or choose what type of field you want this to be. So you'll see we do have 5 different options. True, false, if I choose that, the field would just be a checkbox. Date, time, self-explanatory, it's going to be a date user-defined field. Decimal will make this a decimal user-defined field, and you can go up to 5 decimal places. Text is, again, making this just a text user-defined field. You can see we can do up to 8,000 characters for the text user-defined field. And then integer is just going to be a number, no decimals in that field right there. So all you'd have to do is just choose integer. In our scenario, I'm going to make this a text user-defined field. The next field in this list is the blank value field. So any information that's entered here becomes the value that is saved to the database for this field if there's no value entered into this user-defined field. So in older versions of SalesPad, this actually used to be called default value, but we did change the verbiage because it's not an actual default value of the field. It would just be, if there's nothing entered in that field, what the blank value of it would be. In value options, so what this would be is if you wanted to make this field a drop-down user-defined field. So it is a text user-defined field, but if you only want to give your users specific choices on what they can choose in this user-defined field, that's what you'd use value options for. So for example, my field is called customer type or type of customer. And so this is going to be separate, in GP standard customer class. I'm just going to make up a few of my own types of customers. So we'll call it you notice when I am typing in value options here, I'm doing a semicolon and hitting enter after each option here. You don't necessarily have to hit enter. I just do it just because this is, letting me know that this is a drop down and these are my choices. There are a few options down below here. I'm not going to cover all of them, as you can see in our documentation what the other ones are used for. I will go over some of the main ones that we see being used within User Field Editor. Field is read-only, so what this would be is if you wanted to populate this user field with a script, or if you just wanted to pre-populate this information through SQL or GP and just give the users the ability to see the value and not actually make any changes. Field is a file attachment. We're starting to see this one used a little less and less, mainly because we have our resources module now. But what this would allow you to do is actually tie a specific file path to this user-defined field. One thing to keep in mind, if you are using this field as a file attachment user-defined field, you want to make sure that your users who are attaching the files to this field, they all have access to where the file exists within Windows. Or else if somebody tries to pull up that file and it's in a path that someone can't access, they're not going to be able to open the actual file itself. Field as a hyperlink is a popular one as well, so you could actually use this. I've had some customers in the past that they want to put in the customer's website on their main customer card. That is something you could use field as a hyperlink for. Field as an image, so if, again, something that's used a little less because of our resources module, but field as an image, you can actually tie a specific image file to your user-defined field. And field as multi-select. So in my example, I have these different value options. Maybe it's more than one of these options. You can make this field multi-select, and so that's what that checkbox is used for. Group view permissions. So this would actually allow you to, based on all of your user-defined fields, which groups will have access to view this user-defined field, or who can see this specific user-defined field. And then group edit permissions as well. This is something newer that we've added where you can limit what users can actually modify this existing user-defined field. Quick report. So what this can be used for is actually calling like a SQL query within a user-defined field and giving the user the ability to select an option from that SQL query. So if you read our documentation on this specific field, you'll see the most popular use for it is around the vendor quick report. So what that is a user or a customer of ours can create a sales line user field and call it vendor. And then you can create a quick report or essentially a SQL query that will just do a lookup or select star from the vendor master table. And then if somebody's creating a sales document and adding a line, they can click that user-defined field and it'll just run a SQL query of all your vendors within your system and then give the user the ability to choose a vendor. So if I go to my sales line item here and click on my vendor user-defined field you can see, if I click quick report, you'll notice that this is just essentially a SQL query. And this specific query is actually on our website in our documentation. So going back to my customer user-defined field here. And then UDF calculation. So it's grayed out on mine because if you are doing a user-defined field calculation, the field needs to be marked as read-only. And so you'll see that I cannot modify this UDF calculation field right now. And the reason for that is I need to mark it as field as read-only. We don't allow you to make changes to a user-defined field if you are using this UDF calculation. But if I hover over, you can see a specific example of what you can do with that specific field. Also, like for example, if I click on my balance user field I have in here, just another example of something I did. So I had a client that did not want their users to be able to see the customer's balance from the AR tab on the customer card. So they had me create a user-defined field called balance, and then I just added that user-defined field on my customer header. But you can see this is a pretty basic SQL script that I have in here. We do recommend that you ask anyone on our support team, or if it is currently in an implementation, to review those user-defined field calculations, mainly because they can cause some performance issues if they are not written correctly. Other than that, those are all of the different field properties that we have on our user-defined field editor. Now, once I'm ready to actually, save or create I'm done with my user-defined field, I'll need to go up to the upper left and hit the Save button. And then to the right of that, click the Update Database Table button. So if I click that, it's basically pulling up a confirmation screen asking me to confirm that I'm going to update this physical table, SPX customer, and a specific view of ours. We do recommend, if you are creating a user-defined field for your system, that you'll want to have all users logged out of the system. The reason being is if I create this user-defined field customer type and I have someone accessing a customer record, they're going to get some error messages if they're not logged out of the system, because we're physically updating views and tables at that point in time. So we do recommend that the users log out when you are creating user-defined fields. So I'm going to click yes, and that's going to go out and update the physical table and view. There are a few other options in here I'll briefly talk about. Update all database tables. So what that would be is if I created a user-defined field on this customer business object and I created one on the item master and the sales document, any of these business objects, anywhere where I'm creating multiple user-defined fields, what you have to do is hit save and update database table for each business object. However, if you just click this update all database tables, then that will go through and look and see if you've added any user-defined fields on any of these business objects, and essentially just update all of the views and tables. Design layout. So if I click that, what design layout is on every business object where there's user-defined fields, You'll notice, for example, the customer card. There is a tab called user fields on the customer card. And so what that design layout button allows you to do is modify the user field tab for that specific business object. So I can right click in here and go to customize layout, and then really just customize my user fields really any way I want. Now keep in mind, when you are modifying these layouts, it'll affect all users. Export and import, what that allows you to do is export specific user-defined fields or import specific user-defined fields. So if I click export, you'll see that I can actually choose what user-defined fields I want to export based on the table. And then import would be is if you exported user-defined fields, if you just wanted to import them, clicking import will open up the Windows Explorer and then allow you to import that specific file. And then import data, if you have an Excel sheet that has your user-defined field data in that you want to import, that's what that would be for. There are a few tips that I did want to discuss when creating user-defined fields. So for example, on this customer business object, I created a customer type user-defined field. If I copy this user-defined field to a different business object, for example, in our scenario, if I copy this user-defined field to the sales document business object, if I'm creating a customer for Aaron Fitz and my customer type is set to education, then if I create a new sales document for Aaron Fitz, this customer type user-defined field will automatically populate to education. So it'll actually move that data from the customer card to the sales document every time you're creating it. Same thing with customer address user-defined fields. So those will also automatically copy over to the same sales document user field. The same goes for the item master and sales line item relationship. So for example, if I have this company user-defined field on item master, and I also have it on the sales line item, if I'm adding a line to the order, it'll actually pull that value from the item master onto the sales line item. One thing to keep in mind, if you are creating customer user-defined fields and linking them to GP user fields, or sales document user-defined fields and linking them to GP user-defined fields, the values of those user-defined fields would be stored in the GP user-defined table. So for example, if it's a sales document user field and you link it to a GP user-defined field, it'll store it in the SOP 10106 table. Opposed to if it's not linked to a user-defined field, it'll store it in one of our SalesPad user-defined tables. And briefly, the SQL structure around those tables, if I just pull up my SQL Server Management Studio, so you'll see all these user-defined fields that start with SPX. So if the table starts with dbo.spx, that means it is a user-defined field table. So if I drill into, let's say for example, the SPX sales document and just do a select star from, or select top 1000 from, you'll notice that anytime a sales document is created, this stores all of our user-defined field data for that sales document. Go back to our customer user-defined field here. So I've created my customer type user field, I've saved it, I updated my database tables. Now I want to add this user-defined field to my screen. So I'm going to click close. This is going to make you automatically log off and just hit OK there. And I'm going to log into my database. So now I'm ready to add that user-defined field to my customer card. So I'm just going to pull up any customer in my system here. Do Aaron Fitz. And now if I right click on my layout and go to customize layout here, we will see that I have my type of customer user-defined field, and then I can just drag that anywhere on my grid that I want. So I'll just put it there. I'm going to hit save layout. And now we can see, I made it read only in our scenario. Type of customer is now on my actual customer card. Outside of that, that's it for our user-defined field editor. Thank you for watching.